Hi, I'm Gloria Flanagan, Assistant Director of the Alexandria Small Business Development Center. With me is Ray Sidney Smith, who's the facilitator of our Small Business Roundtable and our Digital Media Specialist. Earlier this week, we had a Small Business Roundtable about how your physical space affects your productivity. We started out by just listing all the different kinds of physical spaces that someone could be working in. For example,
well, we have the very popular concept of co-working spaces, which is the portmanteau of the words collaborative working, so co-working spaces, open space floor plans and regular offices, and then of course closed door offices, sort of like having four walls and a door, and then we have the small office, home office concept, or SOHO. We also have people who work at cafes, out in public, third places, and so we have lots of different options, including small business accelerators and business incubators, which of course offer support and funding and equity-based support services.
Right, when we started out talking about home-based businesses, and their advantages, of course, the commute and not having to get dressed for the office, that kind of stuff, but there's also challenges with working at a home office. Can you list some of the challenges we talked about?
Sure. Finding focus when you are, trying to work. Getting, organization of your space, and of course finding the right tools and the right mindset, and trying to make sure that you're paying attention and staying on track and not getting distracted from, say, the things that are at your home.
Right. It's easy to do laundry when you're supposed to be writing a memo. Oh, yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. And in co-working spaces, I know that there were a lot of advantages to co-working spaces, such as having colleagues to bounce your ideas off of and not feeling sort of alone in the world and that kind of thing. But also some real challenges there, too.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that everybody who works in a co-working space should have a couple of things. One is the ability to put in earplugs or headphones so that you can have quiet sort of time, and making sure that you understand the issues around privacy and confidentiality with regard to your clients, especially if you're in a professional services environment where security of your client's identity or the information that you might be talking about, it might be inappropriate to have. As we talked about, the idea of having a conversation in a coffee shop, that might not be the appropriate place in a collaborative working space or in a coffee shop because it's a sensitive conversation.
Right. We did talk about some new technology in some spaces, none that I've seen around here, but there are spaces where the acoustics are set up such that nobody further than about 5 feet away at a different table would be able to hear what you were saying. That's great, but you don't know how well it works. And also you've got the problem of papers. You certainly don't want your papers to be sitting out if you're an attorney or an accountant or something like this, your client's papers where anyone else can see them. So that's something to just keep in mind when you're doing this.
Absolutely.
And also the type of work you're doing. There are some things that could easily be done in a home office or in a co-working space or even in a coffee shop. But there are challenges and other things, and some you may find that you work best for some types of tasks that you perform in one space. Writing, for example. I find that I've got to be sort of alone without anybody else. I do a lot of my writing at home because it's quiet and it's easy to do. But if you spend too much time quiet and with nothing to do, the mind starts to wander and that sort of thing. But how about you? Where do you...
I tend to write in seclusion also, but I definitely, coming from a big family, I like to work with and around other people. So I really enjoy the concept of working in collaborative workspaces or co-working spaces on occasion, just so that you're interacting with other people, not just my staff, but also everyone else.
Right.
Get together in whatever city I'm in, I'm able to then, coordinate and meet with people. You see the bustling of things happening around you. There's something exciting and fun about that.
We also talked about the importance of getting your brain used to doing the same thing in the same space, possibly at the same time and with the same tools. Could you go into a little bit more?
Absolutely. So there have been a lot of brain science studies about the idea that your mind, and it's the space that it understands location, is actually very strong. And so if you actually do things like, if you write every day like I do, you sit down in the same spot with the same computer, with the same tools, even pen and paper, your mind starts to associate those tools with that location at that particular time, and it makes it that much easier to get yourself into that modality for writing. So, there's some real benefit to doing the same types of activities. So always do your accounting and finance for the month or for the week or whenever you do them at the same time. Do your writing at the same time, make your phone calls in the same space at the same time, and all of a sudden your brain starts to get used to those kinds of pathways that are those activities.
Mm-hmm. And then we started to talk a little bit about environmental concerns, the first of which is just clutter. And not just paperwork. I mean, anybody looking at my office would say paperwork's clearly an issue for me because it's everywhere. But even if you're fairly paperless, you've got to have your digital life organized. And it's important to have the organization there so that you don't spend all of your time trying to find things either digitally or with paper.
Yeah, simplify, simplify, simplify. Having the overarching folder structure match across all of your computers, for instance. Make those folders the same folders in your email. You know, make sure those same categories match what calendar events and how you create your calendar events. You know, all of those things happen to matter as it relates to streamlining, so that things know where things go. And that makes everything much more productive for you because you don't have to think so hard about where things should go. There's a lot of time spent just trying to figure out, where do I put this email? Or where do I put this document that's an attachment to the email? You spend 5-10 minutes 50 times a day, well, guess what? You spent a lot of time just filing. People sometimes hated filing paperwork, you don't like filing paperwork. Well, the reality is that's just transferred over to the digital world. And digital clutter, psychic clutter, and physical clutter are all issues that small business owners have to deal with.
How about some other environmental issues that
there are a lot, actually. A lot of people don't recognize air. The air you breathe is actually an environmental factor. You have to really pay attention to whether or not you have air pollutants in the air. Maybe you have one of those air purifiers, electronic air purifiers, which you can have. I tend to fall in the category of having greenery, plants that actually filter the air. There are several really great office plants that are available from your local nursery that clean the air really, really well. Temperature, climate within your office space or wherever you're working is a real fundamental factor that you need to think about. If the temperature is just off by a couple of degrees, your productivity drops because you're too chilly or you're too hot, and you lose focus on what you're trying to work on. So really pay attention to some of those other environmental factors that make a difference to your overall productivity in your workspace.
Great. So think about where you do your best work. And this is Gloria Flanagan, Alexandria Small Business Development Center.
I'm Ray Sidney Smith of W3 Consulting and a volunteer counselor here at the SBDC.
Thank you.
All right.
It was actually